So welcome to this kind of selective setting for our ribs and our hips. So what you'll place is your seat down in front of the bolster. So you're getting enough height with your blocks under your knees. Knees are stretched outwards. In some way you might sense this is an interesting wave of circulation for our knees as long as they're lifted and they can relax. So you get enough height under the legs for relaxation of the hip joint. Then let's get our belt connected, buckled up for a big loop. And you're going to work your belt in the loop of the belt around your torso and a little lower, right? So it's at the lowest space it can just kind of drop. And then scoop up those feet with your belt and have the circulation dynamic be pretty easeful for the pelvis. So I don't want your belt to be too low, neither too high. So it kind of feels like it sort of holds the pelvis a bit, you know? So maybe not as low as you've gone before. Just kind of feel what that's like. Make sure it's tight so it feels like it's toned. So when you lower onto your back, it's going to be a kind of a rib fold. So this is a nice catch on this pose because there's a balance of hips, back strength, and then the ribs, the thoracics. So I have to use my blanket so it's a little higher than having just the two flat ones. So you've got this opportunity that even if the blanket's like this, is still a lot for you to kind of succumb to in the circulation, then you're going to spend some energy maybe making the blocks a little higher under the legs. Okay, so you don't want to go too low, and you might even bring them up to the highest height or contour them. You might be doing some boat poses just to get this figured out. Getting some boat work today will do. And then challenge the belt by kind of pushing forward a little bit with your feet. So you have some circulation of pressure into the legs and connection with the shoulders rolling back. Sand can go on the ribs. I would probably like the sandbag, especially on this one because of the chest kind of dialed into the lift. But if you feel like, oh, plenty of lift without my sand and plenty of circulation, no problem. You choose sand or no sand. And then cycle back your shoulders, maybe get a feeling of some subtle motionary descent. And this bolster can be a little bit challenging. I mean, we all have a different kind of radius of length right in the core bones. So some of us will have to really work our way around that bolster with the arms, kind of hugging over, you know, opening the chest. And then as you create your breath pace, you know, figure in the length of your inhale and the relaxation on the exhalation. From exhalation, right, comes relaxation. So even if that's the entire emphasis that you're cultivating in the beginning of class, it might just be to kind of assemble yourself as well as you can around these props, and then really kind of settle into the props. Let your abdomen be soft. Make a decision if the sand is supportive of your experience or not. And really feel that reach of the rib cage. That expansion on the inhale. And then as you exhale, it might still feel like you have maintain some of that structural expansion. Let's give ourselves a few more moments of integrating into the nervous system that settling sensation. So even another full minute, feeling how the spine is arching, how the ribs are expanding. And there may be a detail that is obvious to you with the arms. They're pretty fueled up in this position because of the dynamic of the bolster. It's almost like it adds a spark to your heart. But the key would also be to let the arms relax so they don't get too coiled up and tensed up from the position. So breathe in deep. Exhale completely, let it go. Inhaling fully. Belly relaxes. And exhale, let it go. Relax the throat. Yeah, so this is a good one where you can mingle two different poses and perspectives in one shape. It's like chest opening, hip opening. But I'd like to bring us towards kind of this core cylinder for a few moments in between restoratives. So consider how the nervous system has responded here. Really tuning through that midsection. And then move the sand away. And as you reach down to the belt, to the buckle, you're going to loosen that up. And if it's easy enough for you to detach it, go for it. If it's a little bit challenging figuring out where it might be, you can maybe use it, the pull on the belt, to give it some slack so that you can maneuver your knees away from that, but keep the belt easy reach. And then as you position your knees to point up, get a hold of that block. Since it's a firm piece of equipment, place it between the knees. If you can let your spine still stay in this arch, that would be an interesting balance for you, is to maintain this fish pose, right? The arch position in the spine as you put the block there, right? So you try to find some trust here with your back strength. Okay, and if that's difficult and you need to sit up to get the block, then you go with that, but see what you can do. Now scoot the feet forward so that you do have a dynamic working through the leg muscles already. So they're not sliding down to be straight or lengthen. You just want to have some strength work that you can work towards here. Arms reach back overhead, and then feel when the hands are separated, the palms are open. Spine in a kind of an elegant arch here. Shoulder, kind of that, the meat of the shoulders is likely kind of packing back. Okay, one way to look at the shoulders. All right, now when we come up, let's go with massive care. So we'll hold the back of our head with our hands, like you're doing a sit-up. But once you kind of start to lift your head off of the blanket, you might notice that the stomach kind of rallies and grips up, very tuned right into that core cylinder, solar plexus. This whole area gets kind of spun into a grip. So I want you to lift up a little higher so that you do get a feeling of dynamic in the stomach area. It's actually more stomach right than it is lower core. It's in the stomach area is where you're going to get that pull. And the digestive tract's way below that area. And then as you reach your hands forward besides the legs, gradually come up. I would hold the legs because we just don't want to tense up the neck here any more than it is. And you're going to pull yourself up so that you're in a seated, kind of a quasi seat, not perfection. But when your legs are really close to you, it's harder to kind of lift yourself through that natural arch. So simply slide your feet again a little bit more forward. And then as you keep that block between the knees, bring your arms forward of the shoulders, interlace your fingers so they're above the block, and then turn the hands inside out, pressing, and get a feel of the arms and the squeeze into that block. Okay, you're going to keep the contact possibly with the bolster, but you're going to round your back, chin towards chest, and then inhale, lift the arms towards the ceiling. So these should be kind of small tummy motions. So I spine round, flex the spine, chin towards chest. Inhale, ribs trying to go vertical and lift up the arms. That should be very slight. Round your back. Remember, chin towards chest is key. And then inhale, squeeze into that block. Ribs, arms, everything's kind of in total circulation now. One more time, rounding the back and staying kind of your nucleus here into your stomach. Now it works in the lower belly. And then press into your seat. Now notice you might feel your tailbone mostly versus like your sitting bones. So when you do come up, we're going to take the block away and get our belt. Let's see. You're going to take the belt on. It's not buckled up. Just let it be loose, kind of a free belt. If you're sitting on it, try to finagle it away from under your rear. And then take a kind of a regular reach of your belt under your feet to the balls of the feet, and then lift up the feet and use your bolster to kind of help you out. So it gives you a little bit of a hug in your back, little bolster support. Now feel how this is certainly a leg stretch, even though for many of us it might seem like it's a coordination, right, of the upper and lower body. So feel where it's pretty stern, right? There's a lot of strength elements here, or isometric pull. So now that we've done all this kind of rib essence work, then we come into this kind of strict mid-body access. So I want you to try to keep it so it's really straight. So there's not a lot of this kind of bending knee, kind of fumbling. You're working with straight. And if it's difficult to get your hands thus far to the feet, you have the elbows bending. So you're a little bit more bicep curling. Okay, the hip flexors will get fired up a little here. So find that still position and taking about 3 breaths here, even though you've done more than 3. I know we've been here a bit, but now that you have your feet kind of into the belt, see if they can just be supported by the arm structures pulling, breathing. It's only pulling and breathing, pulling the breath. And then as the knees bend, feel where the energy separates in your upper back, or if it doesn't. I feel it separates in my stomach, like when I have the legs straight, it's a different tone in the belly. And then when the knees bend, it's almost like the belly kind of pushes out and softens a bit. So when you lower down your feet, belt away, turn towards your left hip or on your left hip. And let's take it so that when we move away from this kind of restrictive lane of practice, right? Boat pose is a little restrictive. We're going to take a stretch in our core, like a very full core stretch. So if you have a block or a ball, place that perhaps on the inside of that right leg. If you don't have a ball, but you want something softer than a block, you could probably stuff a towel. That might be the proper amount of height. But as you come into this, I like the blanket set like this. This is sometimes interesting when it's just different than I'm used to. The sand is probably your key for this one. So I'm going to add my block on top of my blanket, and then I'm going to figure out where my sandbag went. Layer the sand so that you get the feeling of it through the whole, like the very narrow side panel. Think of this as kind of your side panel. You were just in the front panel, right, with the core. Now we're going to the side core. So if the sand gets a little floppy, doesn't stay on when your arm reaches, you might find sometimes getting it higher than you think helps out too from it falling. But use the sand liberally. If you've got 2 sandbags, go for it. Let the side get that sensation of weight into the muscles. And then as you settle in, feel that cross angle through the left arm, it's between the bolster and the blankets. And if your head wants to be lower, certainly you could take the blanket down, the top one, and reconfigure if you're using your block or not. So there's a couple options with the block. It could be either used or not used under your hand. And you could also work on simply opening the chest and integrating that circulation very slowly into the ribs. And then as the breath is considered in the pose to be a focus, you might be able to tap into your nervous system and see where you can relax more. It's almost always a essential ingredient to your practice is, if I'm in a still shape, what can I give to my awareness, whether it's simply the breath, and then stillness and sensation. And then feeling the sensations the movement of the breath creates. A few more moments. And now we're going to kind of stay with this awareness of the right leg. And now we're going to move into that hip. It will take us a directional shift with our props. So you'll let your sand slough off. And we're going to go into our rotation down to the left with our ribs to kind of lift up, but taking the ball, but you'll need to keep this for this next pose. Again, if you don't have one, you'll try with your block, but just simply pivot your bolster up onto the blanket. And you might not like this much height for this variation. It'll make it easier the higher it is, but kind of check this out. We haven't done it this wave of movement before. So we've done this pose before. It's just the connection is different. So what I like is that even though my right hip when I lay down feels like it got back to whatever basic nature it is, but I did just influence it. So what you'll do is you'll lie back on that bolster lengthwise, spine-wise. This feels kind of nice to have this much height, to be honest. Cozy. Okay, so right foot lifts up, crosses to left knee. Okay, and then take that ball or blanket or sandbag or block. It's just the block could be a little bit pointy, but you'll kind of push that into that outer left greater trochanter. For some of us, it might be kind of a random state of pressure with the ball. I like to push that in and then lean your body weight so you're going straight across, right? It's not too much zigzag here, but you're letting your body weight lean into that object, your left thigh, and then holding the right knee with your left hand. So this is the exact leg, right? We were just working its other side. Well, some of this was work too in our side sage. But feel when you hold onto that right knee or the awareness around the right knee, if you can convince it, the cycle of stretch and flow, the top of this right thigh to actually reach over towards the left. Left, so straight across versus just pulling it to you. Right arm could be passive or stretching back besides your head. And it might feel good for you just to get all the stretches possible for your circulatory system today. At a good time of year, you definitely can start to get cooped up with your movement patterns or your breathing pace right now. So let your body really feel the fullness of the pose. If that's too overstated of an idea, then just simply be. You might feel the left calf a little challenged, right? How the left foot is lying on its side. Maybe you have to kind of work with that. So you feel that you really are on the side of your left foot, not kind of sort of on the very wedge of the little toe side, but really on the side of the foot. It feels like you're rolled on the side of your left foot. Okay, now when we switch sides, let's keep it so simple that your brain stream of direction is just arm down, left hand releases knee, right foot down, and then feeling how that foot touches, the right foot presses. Okay, and then lift up the left foot. So you kind of have to kick it forward. I don't know how many of us could actually probably lift it up straight under the knee, right? You have to kick it. And then cross that ankle to the right knee. And then when you're ready, maybe trying to be a little bit more thoughtful of changing the ball. Just kind of feel how that positional placement of the ball besides the right hip. Be curious if you make it lower on the second side or if it's about the same. But learning to adapt to your body's kind of curiosity. So you start to tilt your legs to the right. You let the right leg really smash into that ball or whatever is under it. Maybe it's the sandbag. That's not a bad one to push in under the leg because it's a responsive surface. That's why it's good. Hold on to the left knee. And then I think my challenge here is to get on the side of my bottom foot, the right foot, is to kind of let that happen. Right, and then that'll let the right knee lower down. You might kind of slip a little bit, but it's not icy. Let the left arm stretch back the sides of your head. Now you hold on to the knee. You might be feeling like one side you pull across pretty easily, and one side might be a little more of a gripper, the hip gripper. Let the weight of your head relax back. Breathe with that natural arch through the spine. Yeah, you kind of feel the weather in the body sometimes. So work with that reaching. And there's always further to go if it feels a little bit stuck. Breathing and accepting how far you get with it, how far that leg does actually cross to the right. I mean, it can always go further. So you have to find where it feels like it's reasonably stretching and there's not pins and needles into your foot. That's probably a bit much. It's something to notice though. That would be something if you've got really tight piriformis, that sensation of kind of pins and needles. Okay, now we know that this is the next side sage. Well, maybe you don't know we're going to do that next, but that's where we're going to go. So this left leg is getting primed for that. So have a little bit of ease with the left arm down. Still the shoulders are back, the chest is easeful, the head is relaxing. No rush. Okay. Now, when you release that grip, see if you can be pretty sneaky how you can get out and into the next shape. So mentally, it's going to side sage. So you go, okay, I can uncross my left foot from the right knee. I can swivel the knees a little side to side, kind of windshield wiper a tiny bit. And then that is going to pull the waist, it's just a smidge. It's a little bit of a waist traction. But kind of play with how the back arch is responding. You're trying to let it stay with that arch. And then when you let your body weight roll to the right, we're going to go right and then into side sage with the right hip down. Sense direction. So my head rolls to the right too. That's a piece of it, how your head moves. And then push into your elbow to get up and lean the bolster, turn it back to that horizontal position across the mat, and then slide the right arm between. I know the bolster kind of pushes back because of the rear a little bit, so you have to finagle your rib cage onto that bolster. And if it gets a little bit turned, that's okay. But you don't want your bolster to get too wonky. You don't want it to face the same direction. Ball on the inside of the leg is probably critical for some of us in our knees. And then after you put that ball there, you need to figure out, okay, is the blanket set enough for me? And then the sand could be similar to the first side sage. It might be a little different. And those of you that do have that interest in having it higher, just be aware it could be a little bit of a workout just to maneuver that along that side channel up into the armpit chest. But it's got some good circulation benefits from that. That is nice, this lymph drain, right? We don't necessarily get this very often. If it's a struggle in the neck and you notice, after trying to settle your left hand, you might have to get that block under your hand pretty high. Might feel kind of unnatural of a height. So kind of play with that so that your neck is comfortable. To me, that's really important, is how's my neck doing? Can I actually relax it? And so come into the pose, follow as you're ready, and then take that time we give ourselves enough time, so some of you might be kind of rearranging your props until it's just right for your arms, for your legs. Good. I suppose the legs are pretty obvious, right? Knee towards the bolster, left thigh stretching back. Now feel the ribs expand and settle back down. So stretching the muscles between the ribs. And maybe study the curve of the waist, the rib cage towards the front of the body. Just a real curved path, right? All the directions. Okay, so with this length on this left side, give it a few more moments. If your left thigh is feeling pretty, it's kind of held in its shape, doesn't want to push farther back, that's okay. Doesn't have to go farther. Okay, but what we're going to work with is kind of extending this spiral through the mid body, the spine, into the ribs. And when you move that sand away, and we'll do the same kind of ideal example. So we know this left side is open. So guess what? We're going to twist on that left side. So you're going to get some balance there. Not the same thing we did last time we got out, but move your block away from behind you or over your head. And then, you know, feel how the chest opens towards the ceiling. Maybe you're comfy with rolling on the back of your head. Maybe it's a little bit concerning. It's a lot of stretch in the ribs, but getting those lungs and the breathing muscles, the upper respiratory, active, strengthening. Okay. So I find this twist to be a little intense right to my back. So when I roll into my right hip, let's take that. And then you're going to actually just simply come up to your bolster. So just sit on top. Take that right leg straight in front. So it's a straight leg, right leg. Left leg crosses over right leg. No sand needed. Flex the right foot. Hold the left leg. Doesn't need to be the knee. It could be below the knee. Could be down to the shin. You know, you decide. But if the foot on the base starts to turn out, the right foot, you know your aim is to go flex, spine arch. Okay, left hand reaches back to the blanket, right elbow hooks to the left knee, and you're just going to take a simple turn. Okay, and that is simple. I don't want you to aggressively force the twist so that you're an owl, but get a sense of turning left, right? So you're facing out of the left side of your space versus the front. You know that there's circulation spiraling through that whole spine, the spiral staircase, right, of the spine. It's a spinal staircase too, but push through that right foot. Yeah, I think the only thing that could be better than this would be your foot at the wall. Then you'd have that integration right through the skeleton. So now when you come back center, okay, we'll take a simple motion. Paschimottanasana, left foot forward, both legs forward. And then get a feel here of the feet flexing, okay? And then you're gonna simply reach your waist forward. So I want you to reach the ribs forward. Maybe the legs will stretch. Feel the toes pull back. I can only think of like an elf, little shoes right now, toes pulling back. So lean forward, use the hand pressure on the bolster, whether it's on top or it's behind the bolster. Kind of grab a hold of that. If you have enough length with you, you can probably hold the back of your bolster. And then, yeah, it's ideal, it's a folding forward. But the neck can get pretty curvy on this one. So forehead down, that's key. Okay, reach through the heels. Good, play with this. Those that have the hands straight down on the bolster, I want you to creep the fingers behind. Pull elbows back, sit yourself up, right leg lifts, crosses over the left, and then hook the left elbow to the right leg, right hand back on the blanket. If the blankets are too high for you, you need to just toss one off. You could certainly do that if it just feels like that's just too much height. You can lower down your height for your hand, but feel how that left arm pushes to the right leg. Squeeze, right? With the arm pressure, there's a little squeeze in the shoulder, and rotate. Breathe. Oh, I'm sure that will help. Okay. So really changing it up with the motion. So as we unwind, what we'll do is take the blanket behind you as you start to shift your right foot off from its crossing. Take the blanket behind you that's turned right, and so it's straight next, it's across the mat now, horizontal, right next to your bolster. And then make your way back. So whatever is your favorite way to spin your feet back behind, like pigeon pose. You're going to bring the left leg back. You're going to step back into your hands and knees pattern. Just play around with changing here. And then turn the bolster forward. And we're going to do actually a very specific down dog pose. So I want you to have your bolster with a blanket on top. And if you find that you need more height on top for your head, you might end up getting a block. Okay, but let's try. So hands are stretched open through the fingers, toes under, lift up the knees, pedal out the legs at first. So alternate bending your knees, and then get a feel here for the spine stretch. So we let the spine really dangle from the back of the pelvis here. But now your goal is to get your head to touch your blanket. So you're in a supported dog pose. Now, for some of you, maybe one or two might find the blankets unnecessary, so you don't need that. But one thing you'll notice is the farther stretched you go with your hands in front, the longer dog pose you have, not time-wise, but distance-wise, the easier it is to get your head down. But what I want you to emphasize is that your head just touches. It's not your crown of your head on the bolster. It's just at the hairline, right? So the frontalis muscle. So when I lower down my head, I want to find touchdown. So let's say you need to build it up. If you need to get a block on top of your blanket, do that, but give it a few moments. So you start to move the legs to stillness, and circulation is really full, right? You have the legs firm, the arms firm, in hope, right, that you're distributing that blood flow to the brain. Okay. Now lower down the knees, simple. And then I'm going to use the whole blanket. Not if you have a block on top, get rid of that. But use all of this to go forward into up dog. So you're letting the tops of the thighs relax, the buttocks relax, and using the spine strength to get that lift. That might be a little unusual not to grip your buttocks to keep this pose. So when you lower down your wrist power, you're not going to compress them anymore. You're going to lower down the elbows to Sphinx Pose. You might feel a little bit breath challenge to have the blanket. I find it pushes into my breathing powers. That's the only thing I got. Okay, so your knees are going to separate. So you're kind of almost in crocodile pose. Your knees are apart. Guess I don't think of crocodiles and knees, but maybe that's the human version, is the knees apart. And then as you have your elbows pressing down, feel the shoulders back, challenging here. I want you to let your head face down, so you're not pulling your neck at all. Okay, those of you that are, not super tall, not super long limb, this is a little more challenging for me to get my elbows to press and kind of hug around the blanket. Okay, now you're going to let your head lower down so it kind of relaxes, right? So you're no longer pulling your neck anyway, any which way, but down. So if you're over the bolster, you can put your head on top of your hands. I'm on the bolster with my chin. So relax for a few moments through the shoulders. See if you can shrug them back and feel the tops of the feet relaxing. Now the head stays the same. The head stays the same. Slide your hands back so it feels as if you're kind of starting to rally for some arm help. Hands slide back, elbows squeeze into the sides. Fingers open. And now we want to take the most smooth upward dog we can. Okay, so elbows by the sides, relax the hips, and then when you push down into your hands, see if you can come up for maybe a very slow set of counts. So lifting up, your arms get strength. You're going to push to lengthen the front body. Lift up to the front of the spine, strengthen the bones through the spine. Okay, and then we're gonna push the toes under and come back to table. Try to let these movements be smooth. It's not easy to do that, I know. And then you'll move your bolster over to the side, and we'll take a few moments where we'll alternate back towards like a child's pose. So sweep the hips back towards the feet, toes under, and then inhale forward to up dog. So there's no bolster now. Now the glutes squeeze, right? The buttocks get a little more work. And then go forward. Sorry, go back. So lengthen back. This doesn't seem forward. Okay, so as you go back, feel the armpit stretch. And then see if you can do a little more curling of the upper spine. So you round the back to come forward, and then feel that arch. Lift up the chest, stretch through the chest. And then come back, but this time, feel the hands stretch open, feel the toes hook under, and then take a lift of the knees and step the feet together, and then step the right foot forward between the hands. Okay, I'm going to take some blocks in, so you might need to take your position down for a moment to get your blocks, scramble around, take a field trip to find them, but find that lunge with that right knee above the ankle and the left knee either down on the blanket or up, you choose. Okay, this seems somewhat energetic to me when I have my knee up. And I like the knee down preferably for my quad stretch, but some of us that might not be accessible. So feel what works for your back leg, either down or toes under up. Take a few moments in a lunge. So I want you to give about another 15 seconds in a lunge. So that right knee is kind of aiming forward, stretching out of the left thigh, back leg. Okay, so when you get a feel of that lunge, I want you to hook the toes under, lift up the back knee for all of us, and then work towards Parsvottanasana, which is really to straighten it all out. So you're going to try to work your feet so the ball of the foot behind is a little lift of the heel, and then see if you can look to your back foot and lower the heel down. Okay, try to lower that back heel down. Now, hands on the blocks, either the blocks are low, mid-height. I'm going to go all the way up with mine. And then steady the balance of the arch of the spine here. So feel that back foot reaching. It may not touch the floor, but I mean, the heel might be a little bit up. But try to reach through the back foot. Lengthen. Yeah, it's tricky to get your waist to feel like it lengthens here. There's always further to go. So let the spine go forward. This time we're going to take a forward bend with this position, so we're not stepping out of it quite yet. So move your blocks a little forward. Now it's even more extension for your spinal column, but also the leg columns. So see if you can get both legs to lengthen. Okay, that means kind of straighten them out. Okay, now if my back foot is in the same track of my right foot, I'm going to step them a little bit outwards from that channel so I can bring my right hand to my sacrum. So try to reach your right hand to your back. Right hand. It gets the point across. Hand or hand. And then turn your waist to the right. So the ribs rotate. You try to let that left heel stretch back. Mine's now up, right? The heel's a little bit up for me right now. Okay. Now keep this rotation through the right hip. Then you lower the hand down and then step the left foot forwards. Well, it's besides the right foot now. And then as you bend through the knees, I'll do something a little different here. I'm going to actually probably turn to face you so you can see it. But when you bend, I want you to hook the left elbow outside the right knee. You try to keep your knees going forward, though. You don't want to be swerving the knees side to side. I'm going to do the same side as you, though. So you have your feet together as much as they'll go. And then you hook that left elbow to the outside of the right knee. The key though is you don't want to be pushing your knees over to the left, right? So you still take that twist, but you're going towards the right, okay? So feel where the bones, we've already done a little bit of this elbow hook just a little while ago, so you'll remember that, or you'll choose not to. And then I want you to switch that side. So just bring the right elbow to the left outer leg and keep the bones in that strong, sturdy place. If it feels just a little bit of a challenge for the lower back, you want to really feel the knees bend and the seat reaching back. You don't have to pump the legs or push the hips down further. High is fine, kind of keeping it up. Breathing, a little long work. Exhale. Hands are going to lower down and then step that right foot back. If the blanket's kind of in your way, you might move it so you don't feel like it's going to trip you. But we'll go backwards on this side. So you step back through that right foot behind you now. And then reach, you're going to feel the two different leg tracks. You know, we do in restorative channels, we've done most of the time has been so much floor-based work. So this is a step in a different direction. I know it is a step up. But see what you can do with these slow standing poses that really is restoring, right, the strength. So feel that back heel. Mine's kind of slipping away, trying to reach it back. But my heel's a little bit up for this one. We're going backwards on the side. Left hand goes up to the sacrum. Okay, back behind you, the back. And then you're going to try to rotate to that left side. Get a little turn through the waist. Yeah, so get a feel good. So where that left leg is trying to lengthen, it might stay bent. You might feel bent out of shape. Okay, feel where the waist turns. Breathing. Okay, now as you lower that left hand, actually let's take one more motion before we get back and down. Turn it out to the left side, lift the left arm up so you can get some rotation through the rib cage, even if it's small dose. And then lower that hand down, but stay with the left leg forward, right? So we're going to lower the back heel and then maintain that full reach. So you're trying to radiate from the legs up into the hips and then into the waist. So maybe the blocks go forward, maybe they go back for some of us, depending on how stable or unstable you feel. And you can always pose pass if you need to get out, go get something to drink, hydration time, it's up to you. We'll be here. So get a feel where that right leg is reaching. If you start to lower down your chest, right, if your blocks go forward, this is quite the pull through that back left leg. Now, a key pattern of influence here is that when you bend your left knee, you're going to get a feel of that right leg stretching back or sliding in my place, sliding back, slippery. So I reach back through that right leg, and then we'll lower down that knee, or some of you might keep it up and stretch the quad through a little bit more of a dynamic lunge. So make sure that you have that support of the blanket if your knee is down and toes relaxed. Blocks could come back besides your little bit closer in towards your mid body, and then project the right hip a little forward. So my back thigh is trying to actually lengthen, like it's trying to stand on its own. From the knee up into the hip. Feel that reach through the hip. Maybe you do. Okay. Okay, now when we shift out of this, of course, this whole sequence has been quite different and we may be used to. We're going to shift out. So you're going to move the blocks forward. Then I want you to kind of walk your left foot over to the right side like pigeon. And then get there. So you lower down the left hip. And then we're going to take ourselves into a Sukhasana forward fold. So I want you to take a seat on your blanket. You might like 2 blankets under your seat. I prefer 2. I mean, I find that just having my hips a little higher is easier on my joint capsules. So just is more calming. But if you like the intense stretch, you can do 1 blanket. So I have a quarter folded blankets. And then when I'm seated, my right leg, so let's start with the right leg crossing forward of the left, and then have a block or a ball if you need under your left leg. So I'm in a cross-legged position, and then I'm going to add my bolster to this. So I want you to get a bolster to the front of your space. You might be using your block with the bolster, we'll find out. But the key here is the sandbag on the right upper thigh. So add a sandbag. This will be like the most simple Sukhasana variation, right? I sometimes add all these motions, but let's just keep it real simple, driven through the joint. So I have the sand on the right leg, and then when your bolster comes up, you're going to lift up the bolster on the short end, and you're going to lean into it. And so this is one where we'll have 2 different variations with the bolster. And you'll be the decider, of course, but as you lean forward, you're kind of sinking your teeth into the hip here, the right leg. So lowering your head. Okay, if you're feeling kind of just inner exhaustion, right? This one might be a little much just to have this pulse through the arms. So if this feels too much, you like the hip part, but the arm part isn't helpful for your nervous system. Your option 2 would be to put your bolster down. Sad for the bolster. But when you do, you might put a block underneath it. So then you can kind of bolster dive. Yeah. I have an appreciation for this pattern. So I prefer my elbows on the bolster versus my hands holding. I can do either one maybe, but this is a good variation for your hip. And it's a little cleaner than when we swerve to the side for what we're trying to support in our joints, right? It's not spinning off into the hip. So the farther I go down with my head, there's more stretch potential. But feel where you have your elbows. If you don't want the block, you can take it away. There'll be more stretch. Okay, so feeling the spine with the breath accent. Inhale, filling. Exhale, letting the body find balance. And sometimes that comes after the practice, right? It ripens. Okay, so kind of mentally scan where in your hips you feel this. Is it right side? Is it kind of a mixture of right and a little left? Is it all inner thigh on the right leg? Or is it a knee, right? So if it's a knee, you want to have your knees supported more, right? If your knee is feeling any kind of twitch, especially in the inside of the knee. So if you need something under your leg, place that. And we're going to continue on to the next side, so the placement under the knee will continue. Okay, so when you start to come up, I want you to place your hands so that they're at the legs, and you'll take a few moments of rounding the back to cat and arching the spine. So you lift up the chin and exhale, rounding the back to cat. Inhale, push into your hands, lifting the ribs. Take a couple more. There's nothing wrong with kind of feeling this alternating pattern through the rib cage when you're sitting, right? It's unusual that we do this when we're sitting. Most of the time we try it when we're on hands and knees. Okay. Now I'm going to have you just simply switch the leg that's in front, not taking any in between chances. So I'm going to swap it out. Now, if my knees want a little stretch, of course, you can stretch out your legs, shake them out. You can even put them on your bolster if you feel like it. Okay. But when you switch it out, it's a bit of a knee pattern right now. We're working through a lot of knee circulation. So coming out of that might feel like there's a little bit of residue inside those areas that you're going to be pushing out when we do legs up the wall. That'll be really nice to know. Okay, so we've got the left leg forward to the right, simple, seated. Okay, Sukhasana, cross-legged. So I bring the bolster up. Now this side, maybe you feel your knee differently. I certainly feel a little difference. It's slightly uncertain what will be good. So I'm kind of wandering my way through. Now, in the last one, when I had my hands down, this I could feel more down to my knee. Now when I'm up, a little less. So everything affects from the top down into your base layer, your top layer. So lean forward and left leg has a sandbag, and then tilt through that waist into the spine. Yeah, see how far you go forwards. And then you can put your bolster down on the block or the floor. So let's say you decide to go bolster down, or you can stay here. You keep this the whole time. Or if you're going to go bolster down, you can have it on top of that block again, or go a little lower. It's not a problem if your right foot is under your left leg. So let's say they're connected, you're squishing the right foot a little bit. It's not improper. Of course, you're trying to have it so the legs have their independence though. So you might have to kind of work with that. Yeah, your body has funny habits from one side to the next, tries to get away with it, huh? So lower down, it's only human. Down through that arm channel, either holding your bolster up this way or lower down onto the bolster. Ribs, head lowers down. See if you can feel the impact of the inhale, filling the lungs, filling the back. And for you, really kind of scanning around that left hip and letting the neck release. And there's a place in your bone structure that pushes in this position. It's both the lower and the upper. It has a pushing. And then the middle is, kind of the squirmy area. It has a little flexibility in the spine and the stomach, the ribs. So let's kind of emphasize that awareness, right? The solid of the upper and lower body, and then the middle in movement. So we're going to integrate that. So when you do start to come up, you can use your hands to help you elevate. You can do a little bit of that cat-cow. Some people like to do kind of a spinal spiral when they're in the seated in between, kind of moving the ribs to the right and left and make it a little bit more circular. But what we're going to do is go into bridge poses at the wall. So I want you to let this midsection really get kind of the fuel now. So let's take our bolster. Actually, maybe right before we go to the wall, take a leg stretch. So both legs go out to Upavista Konasana. Feet are in a wide V shape. So the feet stretch open. the pelvis centered on the bolster, and then flex your feet and lean forwards. You got your hands could be on the floor, they could be on the bolster. You choose. So both legs have this dynamic. Okay, now come back through center, and then let's find our way to a wall space. You don't need a huge amount of wall space, but probably enough for bolster width would be good. Now, taking what you need to the wall will be a bolster, a sandbag, and a block set. And if you have actually just one block, so one block, and if you have a ball, bring a ball. So I want you to slide over to a wall with a ball. Okay, have a blanket underneath your head, so one will be fine. And when you lower down, I want you to sit yourself close to the wall, enough on you're on your back, and your feet go up at the wall. And your work here is going to be, let's just start with what we know we're going to end up with at some point anyhow, is that we want an angle that's far enough away from the wall that you can relax your pelvis on the ground, and your feet can be up and you bending your knees. Right? So you want that right angle. So when you get a feeling of your feet apart, nothing between the legs quite yet, because I want you to sense the back of the pelvis heavy. And then if you add a ball or a block between the knees, if you have a ball, use that, because it's like, it's a different kind of respect in the muscles, I find, but they're both very accessible, ball or block. Now, when you're lightly holding onto that object, the ball is very light. That's another reason it's a super light thing to hold. Get a feel that you're mildly pushing into the object between the legs, but that the hands may be on the hip bones, and you're trying to let your spine lengthen like you do in cat pose, right? The spine is flexing, right? So let the back just center, and then arms go overhead. The blanket doesn't have to be under your head, but if you like to keep it there, you can. Okay, so feel that arm reach back. And now push into the feet. Now I might be a little farther away from the wall than I ought to be. I'm going to find out really soon. So when you lift up your hips, just go a little bit, because the spine will take time to adjust, and then lower the spine down. I'm not going to go any higher than feeling the pressure on my back when I lift my hips, right behind my heart, not to my neck, and then lower the spine down. So my arms have remained overhead, but you don't have to. Your arms could be by your hips too. You could have them down here. So one more time, lifting this way. Okay, now when your spine lowers down, now let's get a little bit into the spine massage. So I either keep the blanket or I lose it. You might notice a little teensy weensy amount of blanket under the center of the back of your head can be sometimes nice to have here. Just not such super padding. Now I let the hands press down. I push the shoulders down. So there's already, my pelvis is on the floor. There's already a natural arch in my spine. Okay, now you can have the ball or block or lose it. You get to choose. So we're going to do a couple drawbridges, and then we're going to hold the bridge pose with the block under the sacrum pretty soon. So push into your feet, which is push into the wall. And then as you lift your arms up and the hips, I want you to stretch your arms back. Now again, you get to decide, is this blanket good for me or is it harmful for my neck? So if it doesn't feel right, just let it go away. Now lower the spine down, arms lower with the hips. Okay, inhale up, hips lifting, spine motion with the strength of your legs. And then spine lowers down. Okay, now if it seems like a true exercise right now, take the last one where you kind of methodically move through kind of massaging the vertebrae. So your arms could go with you or not, but it does seem relatively clean when the arms go back and overhead and the hips lift up. Okay, so push into the wall to distribute that circulation in the spine. So it's for the bones, right? The density. The pushing into the wall brings that into the bones. That's resistance. Okay. Now spine goes down. Now, if you have anything between the knees, it needs to go away. And then you're going to take a block. And I want you to use the positioning angle of the block so all you're working towards is getting it under your sacrum. So it doesn't have to be a fanciful shape. So I'm going to push my feet directly into the wall. Knees are apart, hips distance. And then as I push in, it tends to slide a little bit in your shoulders. So push in and keep the head down and lift the hips up and slide a block low to medium. And some of you might want to go to the high height, but you'll decide. If you feel like you can get higher, because the wall's going to help you go higher, but you can't quite muster it up there, what you can do is walk your feet up higher at the wall, then try it again. Lift your hips up, and you might find, oh, that's the key, is to get my feet higher at the wall, and then I can actually get my hips higher up on that block. This is the one time you'll be able to get your block likely under your back pretty easily with the height of the block when you use the wall. Okay, now we're going to bring our feet down, that means to the floor, and the frontal hip bones get to open, right? The hip flexors, psoas, super good pose. So get very chesty, right? Kind of obnoxiously open up through the rib cage, the chest. Almost feels like you got these wings with your elbows to your hands, kind of fluttering. And then feel if you can get those just to simply lower down and roll the shoulders down and in. Now, if there's a back tension that you can't rid of, make the block lower. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. You don't have to force the block high. There is a few benefits, right? You can feel the difference in the hip joint when the block is high enough, opening up, and getting some fresh circulation there. Quite the inversion, right? For the diaphragm, for the breathing muscles. So take a few full breaths, both sides. Inhale and exhale. Even if the inhale is the challenging part, right? That could be, but let your head stay centered versus rolling it side to side. Head relaxed, stretching at the root of the neck. You know, the feet are towards the wall right there at the base. They're not walking in towards your seat, right? So if I do have them towards the base of the wall, a little easier on my hamstrings. But, you know, if you are working with some challenging opportunities here, you might feel what that's like. But I would be a little wary because we don't want to pull our hamstring, right? Because it's in a prime position that if you try to activate it, it can buckle. So do just the bare minimum with pulling on the hamstring strength. Okay, now, since our feet pushing into the ground could be challenging to get your hips up off the block. So just kind of give it just feel, just kind of notice, I mean, one buttock might be more challenged than the other. It's interesting how the circulation goes from the heel to the back of the leg into the hamstring and then inserting. Fascinating stuff. But now when your feet come up to the wall, so much easier. Now I have symmetry. Then I want you to work with pushing. Careful here. When you push into the wall, you want to do a little bit of a tail tilt. So like a little bit of a tail tilt, tucking. Okay, and then reach for your block, slide it out right away, and then let the spine lower and take a hip crossover of choice. So here's two options, and one is really basic, I know. The one is to put the left foot on the right knee with the right foot still at the wall. All right, this is very basic. Oh, a little bit of my hip is working there. But you might want a little more, which would be I pull the blanket in as well, cross the left leg over the right leg, and then they sway over to the right. And you don't have to use your bolster on it. We'll use that for legs up the wall in a moment. But you can just keep it real simple here. So crossover, maybe pack on a sandbag on the outer left hip. But feel that your pelvis is still kind of coming down from its last pose. So it's like you don't want to shock the sacrum. So sometimes not moving a bunch of props around is not ideal. So we're taking it real simple here. And again, if you don't want this pose, twist this way, you can have your left foot on the right knee at the wall. If you think that's kind of good for your back and your hip, but you want a little more, you could put your block on the inside of that left thigh and just use your hands holding the block to push to the left leg. That might feel really neutralizing in the back. So kind of play with that. The sandbag is optional here. You just put it on the outer leg. If it's not convenient for you to get it, don't worry about it. Stretch the knees over and down to the right. Blanket under your head, that's important as I mentioned. Belly relaxed. Breathe slow. Head rolls left. Okay, now come back through center. And I want you to change that crossing. So adapt if your right foot now goes to the left knee at the wall, left foot at the wall, or you take the crossing right leg over left, knees to the left. Now we're purposely making the sequence, especially the last half hour of it, very balanced, right side, left side, nothing too much in between the sides. So keep it real simple. And if the hip doesn't feel this, you certainly could work with getting a sandbag on the outer right thigh. Just layer it across. If that's not obvious to you, you would use your sandbag and place it close to the hip, right? It's a little more challenging to the knee on this version if the leg is crossed versus the leg on the bolster we've done before. It's just a little more torque on the knee joint. So I don't think you want to put your sand on the knee because it will push it down further. Okay. So only a little bit there. With that circulation, head rolls to the right. Give a final few moments. Do work with the sensation of awareness of your hip before we do legs at the wall, which will be next. If you just can't wait to get into that, you can go anytime with it. Give a few more seconds here for the right hip. Okay. Now when you come out and you start to prepare for getting to the legs up the wall, I want you to first get a feel of your knees to your chest here. That's how we end up coming out of legs up the wall, but also how we sort of get into it, but we get into it from the other side with the knees. So when you roll either side, left, right, go to one side to come up, and then get your bolster, or if you don't have one, you can use a stack of blankets, high stack of blankets is good too. But when you use that, keep an awareness that when you roll yourself to get your feet up the wall, you want to get everything as high as possible. So if you do want to get higher up, more inversion, you can put a blanket on top of your bolster. It's definitely changes it. Even that inches makes a difference. So you can always give it a try. But I'm going to sit on a flat bolster, so I'm comfortable with that. So keep in mind, we just had our knees tucked in. It's sort of how you get into this. You want to sit with your rear to the wall like you're sitting bones. And then when you do have your seat next to the wall place, you're obnoxiously close. You're going to try to roll and then let the legs swing up the wall. So it doesn't have the prettiest appearance to get there, right? To just swing the legs up. But once you arrive at the arch of the spine, You might find that it's very easeful for you to have your back in this traction, but you want to get closer sometimes to the wall. Sometimes it's helpful. I'm trying to get a little bit more connected to the bolster being a tiny bit away from the wall. So I have kind of this uncertainty with the pelvis, which is a helpful arch in the spine. So you can play with that. If you have sand, add that to the soles of your feet and or the belly, if that feels more comfortable for you. But with the back muscles centering, open out the arms, meaning open out the chest. Opening arms opens a chest. And then when you realize the motion of balance for each lung, you can find whatever kind of trip you'll feel with your breath. Maybe it's the sense of squeezing when you inhale. I mean, it is a pull through the nostrils, but it's nice to feel that instead of a squeezing, it's an expansion in the belly. Even more so on this pose, right? So we're working on reversing the flow of gravity, but even reverse the effects of gravity on the circulatory, the vascular system. And resting the organs from gravity's downward pull. So giving these moments where there might be some resistance and releasing that gravitational pull on all things in your body when you're upside down. Just a different network of circulation now through into the heart and into the lungs. Resting your eyes. With any hardware on the face, just put it aside for a few moments here so your skin cells and all in the face can soften. So feeling the stages of returning the body to a place of balance. Now feel where the neck is the most supported so that the head does not push the chin too far down. You want to feel where there's a little space from the throat, right, to the chin, so it's not squished down. You might just touch that space near the thyroid and then relax the throat. Let the feet flex. Giving the body a few more moments to integrate and absorb the effects from practice today. With a very full abdominal breath, so filling the belly, and then naturally feeling it release down towards kind of that water fall, right? This pose can sometimes be called waterfall because of the circulation that is experienced down to the pool of the abdomen. You know, bend your knees. Slide the feet down, of course, and then as you move the sand, you know how the knees stay in this pattern of squeezing inwards. Now, this might be a relatively easeful position for your knees, and maybe if you were on the shins, it wouldn't be. So kind of play this out, this kind of child's pose version right on your back. Just don't have to push the floor with the knees. Feet relaxed. And let's combine our focus for a few moments. Let the legs roll yourself to your side. And then coming up to sitting, take a seat on either the bolster next to the wall or just simply away from that. Sometimes sitting next to the wall can be nice. So when you have that crossing angle, maybe close it off a little bit more than when we had seated Sukhasana. So it's a little closer in of a knee angle. And then let your shoulders roll back and feel where their motion is lifting and motioning through the kind of shoulder tundra and then through the heart. Hands lift up to the heart center. Brain surrenders down into that space. Inhaling together and exhaling, bowing into your heart. Namaste. Thank you. Okay.